Adama princess fell for a mysterious stranger with a haunting charm. She unknowingly sealed a dark fate not just for herself but for her entire kingdom. Betrayal, forbidden love, and a terrifying secret unravel as she fights to reclaim her soul. Love isn't the only thing that's dangerous. Sometimes it's the love that curses you forever. Princess Adama was known far and wide for her unmatched beauty. Her golden hair shimmered in the sunlight, and her eyes sparkled like stars in the night sky. Though people traveled from distant lands just to catch a glimpse of her, Adama's heart remained untouched. Many suitors, from princes to nobles, came seeking her hand, offering riches and promises, but none could win her affection. She longed for a love that went beyond wealth or status, a connection that reached deep into her soul. King Oba Adebayo, her father, ruled the kingdom with wisdom and justice. Yet, as the years passed, his health began to decline, and the weight of ruling grew heavier. His greatest worry was the future of the kingdom. His beloved daughter had yet to find a husband. The king knew that the strength of the kingdom rested on a suitable match for Adama, someone who could help rule alongside her and protect the people. Determined to find the right prince, King Adebayo sought the counsel of the kingdom's wisest wizards and seers. They foretold that only a man of purity and strength could win the heart of Princess Adama. Yet, no suitor seemed worthy of her, and time continued to slip away. The kingdom's people began to grow restless, whispering that the princess was too proud or too difficult to please. The king's concern deepened, for the kingdom needed stability, and he feared that without a worthy heir by his daughter's side, their future was uncertain. As days turned into weeks, Princess Adama withdrew further into herself. She sat by the window at night, gazing at the stars, wondering if true love was merely a dream. The thought of an arranged marriage, one based on convenience rather than affection, filled her with dread. She wished for someone who could understand her, someone who could see beyond her title and truly see her for who she was. Little did she know, her life was about to take a turn she could never have imagined. As the days stretched on, the kingdom remained peaceful, though Princess Adama's heart grew heavier with each passing day. Despite the many suitors that had arrived, none of them could reach the depths of her soul. She spent her days in royal duties, but the nights were filled with longing, a longing for something or someone that could bring meaning to her life. The princess often found herself wandering the palace halls, staring out into the vast kingdom beyond, wondering if her heart would ever find peace. One evening, as twilight descended, a peculiar stillness filled the air. The usual sounds of the bustling city faded, and an eerie silence swept over the land. The kingdom seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to happen. It was then that the strange figure appeared at the royal gates. He was tall, cloaked in dark, flowing robes that shimmered with an otherworldly light. His eyes glowed like burning embers, and there was an aura of mystery surrounding him that none of the guards could explain. The figure moved silently, as if the very air parted for him, and he made his way straight to the royal court. Princess Adama, who had been sitting by her window, felt an odd tug at her heart. She stood and moved to the balcony, drawn inexplicably to this new presence. The figure paused, his gaze rising to meet hers. There was something about him, a magnetic pull that made her pulse quicken. It was as if he were the very answer to her silent prayers. "I am Orun," the figure said, his voice deep and rich, like the sound of wind whispering through the trees. "I have watched over this kingdom for centuries. You are the one I have been waiting for." Adama's breath caught in her throat. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling, though she could not understand why. "I am the spirit of the night," Orun replied, his eyes glowing brighter with each word. "I offer you a life of power, prosperity, and eternal beauty. But in return, I ask for your heart. Marry me, and together we shall rule this kingdom." Adama stood frozen, her heart racing. She had heard tales of spirits and demons, but this felt different. Was this a sign? Was it truly the one she had been waiting for? I will marry you, she whispered, barely able to believe the words coming from her own mouth. The days that followed Princess Adama's agreement to marry Orun passed in a haze. The kingdom buzzed with excitement at the news of the royal wedding, though some murmured anxiously, uncertain about the mysterious spirit their princess had chosen. But Adama's decision was made, and it was clear that she had been swept away by something beyond her understanding. Orun's presence, alluring and dark, seemed to cast a spell over her, making everything else feel distant and unimportant. Preparations for the wedding moved quickly. The royal palace was adorned with shimmering fabrics and fragrant flowers, and the air was filled with the sounds of music and laughter. The kingdom's people, though unsure, joined in the celebrations, eager for the joy that a royal wedding always brought. Yet, beneath the surface, an undercurrent of unease lingered. King Oba Adebayo, though he loved his daughter dearly, could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. Orun was no ordinary man. His eyes, his presence, his promises were like nothing the king had ever encountered. On the day of the wedding, the kingdom seemed to hold its breath. Princess Adama, dressed in a gown of silver and gold, walked down the aisle, her heart pounding in her chest. The grand hall of the palace was filled with royal guests and courtiers, their faces a mixture of awe and apprehension. At the altar stood Orun, his dark cloak flowing like a shadow, his eyes glowing with an unsettling light. The moment he saw Adama, his lips curled into a smile, and the air seemed to shimmer with an almost palpable energy. King Adebayo stood at his daughter's side, his face lined with worry. He placed Adama's hand in Orun's with a heavy heart. He did not fully understand the spirit's power, nor did he trust the promises of prosperity and greatness that had been made. But he had little choice. Adama had made her decision. As the ceremony began, Orun's voice filled the air. I vow to you, Princess Adama, that together we will bring this kingdom to new heights. You will be my queen, and we shall rule forever. Adama's heart fluttered with a mixture of excitement and fear. This was it, the moment that would change her life forever. She could feel Orun's power in the air, a magnetic pull that seemed to fill the very room. When it was her turn to speak, her voice was steady, though she could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. I vow to stand by you, Orun, she said, her gaze never leaving his. Together, we will build a future where the kingdom thrives. The vows were exchanged, and as Orun kissed her, his lips were cold, but the kiss sent a strange shiver through her. The moment was sealed. As the night descended upon the kingdom, the celebration continued, but Princess Adama could not shake the growing sense of unease within her. The promises Orun had made were grand and intoxicating, yet deep inside, a voice whispered that she had just sealed her fate. Later that night, as she lay beside her new husband, she tried to push away her doubts. She was now a queen, with power and beauty beyond her wildest dreams, yet something lingered in the air, an uncertainty that she could not ignore. The kingdom seemed to flourish in the days following the wedding, and Princess Adama, now queen, took on her new role with grace and determination. The palace was filled with celebrations, and the people marveled at the bountiful harvests and the prosperity that swept across the land. The once quiet village markets buzzed with life as the kingdom thrived under Orun's influence. The promise of a brighter future that the spirit had given seemed to be coming true. But as the days passed, strange things began to happen. At first, it was subtle, small, almost unnoticeable changes that no one could quite explain. The once crystal clear river that ran through the kingdom began to swell with an unnatural force, its waters darkening as they rushed faster and faster, creeping closer to the village edges. The sky, once blue and open, began to darken at strange hours, with heavy, ominous clouds rolling in even on days that should have been clear. Princess Adama noticed these changes, but she brushed them aside. After all, her kingdom was prosperous and the people were happy. She had everything she had ever dreamed of: power, beauty, and a mysterious yet captivating husband. But something still gnawed at her heart. Late at night, when Orun was beside her, his cold presence seemed to seep into her very being. She began to feel a coldness in the air whenever he was near, a subtle weight on her chest that she could not ignore. One night, unable to sleep, Adama rose from her bed and walked to the balcony. The wind was sharp, and the once peaceful night now felt unnaturally still. The faint glow of Orun's eyes could be seen in the distance, and she felt a strange pull to him. The moonlight cast long shadows, and it was then that she noticed something even more disturbing. A thick fog had begun to roll in, swallowing up the edges of the palace grounds. The fog seemed to have a life of its own, creeping and crawling in the direction of the river, as though it were being drawn to some unseen force. Adama stood there, staring out at the fog, a cold chill running down her spine. She had heard old tales of spirits who fed on the land, draining it of its life force until nothing remained but darkness. Was Orun truly what he had promised to be? A protector and ruler, or something more dangerous? The next morning she confronted him. Orun, the land, the river, something is wrong. Why are the skies growing dark and the river's waters rising? Orun's gaze softened, and he took her hand gently. Do not fear, my queen. These are signs of the power I bring. The land must adjust to our rule. Trust in me, and soon everything will be as it should. But Adama could not shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. The signs were becoming too clear, and the promises that once seemed so genuine now felt like a cruel joke. She had married a spirit, a being who had promised prosperity, but now it seemed he was claiming more than just her heart. The darkness was growing, both in the land and in her soul. Days turned into weeks, and the unsettling changes in the kingdom only worsened. The once thriving crops began to wither, their vibrant colors fading as the soil grew barren. The river, once a life-giving force, now ran dark and swollen, its currents carrying strange, murky waters that left a foul scent in the air. The fog too seemed to grow thicker, creeping into the villages and blanketing the land at all hours, even during the day. The kingdom, once full of vitality, now felt like a land caught in the grip of something dark and unnatural. Princess Adama had become a prisoner in her own palace. Orun, though charming and powerful, was growing colder with each passing day. His once comforting presence now filled her with dread. She could no longer deny that the promises he had made, promises of prosperity, eternal beauty, and power, had come at a price. The land had changed under his rule, and so had she. The energy she had once felt in her body now seemed to drain away, replaced with a deep, gnawing emptiness. One night, unable to bear the isolation any longer, Adama ventured out into the fog, drawn by an inexplicable force. The kingdom was eerily silent, the usual sounds of life replaced by the eerie hush of the night. She walked through the mist, her heart pounding, until she reached the river bank. The water flowed faster than ever before, swirling and crashing with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. As she stood there, gazing at the churning water, she felt a presence behind her. Orun emerged from the fog, his dark figure looming like a shadow in the moonlight. His eyes glowed brighter than ever, and his smile was both knowing and sad. Do you see it, my queen? He asked softly, his voice almost a whisper. Do you see the power that I have brought? The land must obey its master, and now it does. This kingdom, this river, all of it belongs to me. And so do you. Adama turned to face him, her heart racing. The man, or the spirit she had married, was not the one she had hoped for. The power that he brought had come at the cost of everything she had once loved. The kingdom was withering under his control, and so was she. Her soul felt as though it was slipping away, consumed by his darkness. I never asked for this, she said, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and anger. I wanted love, not this Discourse. Orun's smile faded, his eyes darkening. You knew what I was, Adama. You knew the price. And now you are mine. Body, heart, and soul. There is no escape. For the first time, Princess Adama felt the full weight of her mistake. She had thought she could control the situation, that her love could tame the darkness that Orun represented. But now, standing in the heart of her kingdom's decay, she realized how wrong she had been. There was no love in this union, only power, and the price was more than she could bear. The days after that fateful night by the river were filled with turmoil. Princess Adama could no longer ignore the truth. Her kingdom was withering, and the power she had once believed would bring prosperity now seemed to be draining the very life from the land. The people, though still loyal to her, had begun to murmur in fear, sensing the changes that had taken root. Crops failed, the animals grew restless, and the once stable river now raged uncontrollably, swallowing entire villages. Even the skies seemed to mourn, perpetually clouded and dark. Adama no longer slept through the night. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the cold presence of Orun beside her. His touch, once electrifying, now felt like ice. The power he had promised her had come at the cost of her own spirit. She had become a mere vessel in his dark kingdom, a queen without a soul. The love she had once believed in now seemed a distant memory, replaced by a deep, gnawing dread. Orun too had changed. The warmth that had once captivated her was gone, replaced by a chilling detachment. His eyes glowed brighter than ever, but there was no compassion in them, no understanding. He had claimed her heart, but it was clear now that it was for power, not love. One evening, Adama could take no more. She could no longer remain a prisoner in her own kingdom, ruled by a spirit who had promised her the world only to leave it in ruin. She had to break free. She had to find a way to restore her kingdom and her soul. With a heavy heart, she called upon the old wisdom her grandmother had passed down to her. Wisdom about the spirits who roamed the land and the power of ancient incantations that could banish them. The princess had never fully understood the old stories, but now, in her desperation, they seemed like the only hope. She knew she had to act before darkness consumed everything she loved. That night, Adama slipped away from the palace. The fog was thick and the air was cold as she made her way to the ancient shrine at the edge of the kingdom. The shrine, hidden deep within the forest, was said to hold the power to banish spirits who had claimed the land. If she could perform the incantation her grandmother had taught her, there was a chance she could break the bond with Orun and free her people. As she reached the shrine, Adama hesitated. She had never attempted such a powerful ritual. The spirits she was about to confront were ancient, and their wrath was known to be deadly. But she had no choice. She recited the words her grandmother had spoken to her in whispers so many years ago, her voice shaking but steady with determination. The air around her began to hum, the ground beneath her feet trembled, and for the first time in a long while, Adama felt a glimmer of hope. The darkness that had hung over her life for so long was starting to shift. The power of the incantation filled the air, and she could feel Orun's presence, cold and powerful, reaching for her. You cannot escape me, Adama. Orun's voice echoed through the fog, his tone low and menacing. But Adama stood her ground, the words of the incantation growing louder as the power of the shrine intensified. The ground cracked open, and the very earth seemed to protest the spirit's hold. She had to break free. Her kingdom, her heart, and her soul depended on it. The ground trembled beneath Princess Adama's feet as she stood at the shrine, chanting the ancient incantation her grandmother had passed down to her. The air was thick with the energy of the spell, crackling with an intensity that sent a shiver through her body. She could feel Orun's presence all around her, his power, like a cold wind, trying to claw its way into her heart, to drag her back into the darkness. But Adama would not be swayed. This was her only chance to break free from his grip, to reclaim her kingdom and her soul. The fog thickened, swirling around her like a storm. Orun's voice echoed through the mist, a low and haunting sound that made her heart race. "You cannot defeat me, Adama," he whispered, his voice like the rustling of dead leaves. "You are mine. I gave you everything: power, beauty, and immortality. You belong to me." But Adama, her eyes shining with newfound determination, raised her hands higher, her voice growing louder. "I never asked for this power, Orun. I never asked for you to take everything from me. I wanted love. I wanted life. I wanted to rule with my people, not as your prisoner." The air around her began to crackle, and the ground shook violently. Orun's figure materialized from the fog, his form shifting between shadow and light. His eyes burned with fury, his once calm demeanor now replaced by a raw, uncontrollable rage. He stepped toward her, his shadow growing taller, but Adama stood firm. "You think you can defy me?" Orun's voice was a growl filled with wrath. "You think you can destroy the very power that gives you life?" Adama's heart pounded, but she did not waver. She knew that this was the moment of truth. The bond she had with Orun, formed by her desperation for love and power, had bound her to him. But now she was strong enough to break it. The words her grandmother had taught her were powerful, and they began to resonate with the force of the earth itself. The shrine, ancient and sacred, responded to her will. "You are not love," she declared, her voice steady and filled with conviction. "You are darkness, and I will not let you take my kingdom any longer. This is my land, my people, and I will fight for them until my last breath." The ground beneath them cracked open, and a blinding light erupted from the shrine. Orun screamed, his form flickering in and out as the power of the incantation began to strip him of his strength. The very earth beneath them groaned in protest as the bond between them shattered. The fog, once thick and suffocating, began to dissipate, and the winds that had howled with Orun's fury began to calm. For a moment, it seemed as though the world itself had held its breath. The light from the shrine grew brighter and brighter, until, with a final deafening roar, Orun vanished, his dark form disintegrating into the air like smoke. Adama fell to her knees, exhausted but free. The weight that had pressed on her chest for so long lifted, and she felt the warmth of the land return. The darkness that had gripped the kingdom began to fade, and the once stagnant river began to flow with clear, clean water once again. The fog lifted, and the sun began to shine through the clouds. The kingdom was healing, its life force restored. As the days passed, Adama worked tirelessly to restore her kingdom. The land flourished once again, its beauty unmatched. Crops grew in abundance, and the people thrived under her guidance. Her reign, though born from struggle, was one of peace, prosperity, and justice. She ruled not through fear, but through understanding, and her people loved her for it. Princess Adama, the once doubtful and lost soul, had become a queen who knew her worth. And though the memory of Orun, the spirit who had once claimed her heart, lingered in the depths of her past, she no longer feared it. She had learned that true power did not come from external forces, but from within. And with that power, she ruled with a heart full of love for her people, knowing that no darkness could ever again claim her soul.